Okay, so my topic for tonight is my arrogant planning. How's that for a discussion title? My arrogant planning. I'm kind of hoping that there will be some interaction, that it won't all be me, or this will be about 4 minutes, and then we can be free about our evenings. So my wife is sitting over here very quietly. She keeps sitting that quietly. I may have to turn the computer so you guys can see her, which means she'll scramble under the table and hide from the camera. So she's now smirking at me, giving me the look. So, okay, anyway. All right, we're going to be in James chapter 4. So if you have a Bible, you can turn to that, James chapter 4. Or if you're really skillful, you can figure out how to do that on your phone or on your computer. But we'll see how we do this. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 4, verses 11 through 17. All right, let me go full screen and then go gallery view. Staring at Jeanette's ceiling is a little distracting. But anyway, here we go. All right, it says, do not speak evil. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There's only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him is it a sin. When I was thinking about what to do for tonight and the next couple of weeks, this idea of my best laid plans going awry seemed like a pretty good topic to go through. And so we'll have a couple of weeks maybe of talking of different Bible characters who had a plan, but it didn't necessarily work the way that they had intended it to. And I kind of got my title from the verse there. It says that you boast in your arrogance. And it's kind of interesting. This quote from Spurgeon says, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. It is a great folly to build hopes on what may never come. It is madness to risk everything on the unsubstantial future. Life is like a vapor. Sometimes these vapors, especially at the time of sunset, are exceedingly brilliant. They seem to be magnificence itself when the sun paints them with the heavenly colors. But in a little while, they're gone, and the whole panorama of the sunset has disappeared. Such is our life. It may sometimes be bright and glorious, but it is still only like a painted cloud, and soon the cloud and the color in it are both gone. Therefore, if this life is unsubstantial as a vapor, and nobody can deny the fact, let us regard it as such, and let us seek for something substantial elsewhere. Unless we purposely live with a view to the next world, we cannot make much out of our present existence. So, sometimes I was just thinking, how many of us imagined 2 weeks ago that we would be gathering together via some type of technology versus actually being together. It seemed like it went from this thing over in China to suddenly in Europe a little bit to suddenly to like today, this afternoon, finding out that at least for Pinellas County, we're going to be sheltering in place. And the only reason that you can go out is to go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy, go to your doctor. They do allow you to go outside and exercise, but you have to be 6 feet apart when you exercise. I heard a comment from the sheriff. He said that the sheriff's office will be, I don't know what that was. My house is falling apart. Will be enforcing that. So I don't know if they're all running around with 2-meter sticks glued together so that they can carefully measure quickly how far apart we are. But I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about the way that we normally plan. I will confess that oftentimes when I plan, it's kind of like the Stephen Curtis Chapman song that, I wrote down everything that you should do and then went to you with it. Um, I am at times not that great at praying when I'm making my plans. It's not that I'm making them without any thought of God. It's just I don't remember to take the time in prayer to do it and to plan. So some things that I'd like us to talk about, and you'll have to unmute yourselves and talk, is first thing is, it's interesting in this quote from Spurgeon and in James that oftentimes in the scripture we are reminded that we are fairly frail. So why is it, do you think, that scripture so often reminds us of our human frailty?
Because we forget.
So we know where to rely, where to store up our treasures, where to keep our eyes on. I think if we thought we were this, steel lunch tin that could protect our lunch, then we would rely on our own, metal, but really we're this paper bag that can easily be crumped up, or a jar of clay that can easily be broken. I think it's tremendous of our weakness, and also the fact that if this life is a vapor, then we should be looking past it towards eternity, not neglecting this life completely, not becoming just foolish in how we live this life because it is a vapor, but knowing that it is going to be short-lived. This is not our home. We are called to greater things beyond just what we can see, touch, and taste.
Yeah, I like that part of the quote that says, unless we purposely live with a view to the next world, we cannot make much out of our present existence. Of thinking of what we can do for the Lord. So here's some things that we can talk through. What are some results that perhaps you have endured or you have seen other people endure because they planned without any regard to God?
Can I give an example?
Especially if it names your children. Yes, that would be wonderful.
Well, I was thinking about Joshua in the Old Testament.
Oh, okay.
With his, he looked at all the evidence. He did love God. He wanted to obey God, but the Gibeonites had been deceitful and pretended to be from a long way away. And so he's like, okay, we will make a treaty with you. And then found out that they were only a 3 days journey away. But God still held him. It's interesting. God still held him accountable to abide by that, even though he had been lied to.
Right.
And that's why he made it.
So how do we, because I'm assuming that most of us, if not all of us, have not had audible conversations with God. At least, no, I haven't had audible that he answers. How do we use his word to apply in our making of decisions? Can you think of anything in scripture that would be helpful when we're trying to make a decision?
Well, he promises that if we seek wisdom from him, he will give it. I mean, I believe in James. That's where one of those promises is, that seeking wisdom from him. He's not going to shut us out and say, no, you've already been stupid too many times. You're not getting any more wisdom.
Well, that would have got me past like 4 years old. Yeah, that's right. And I think also there's things in his word that are, I can't think if the word is precepts or principles, that while we may not be able to say like, should I do this? You may not be able to necessarily, turn to a verse in the Bible and read it and say that. But there are things that give us wisdom, does whatever I'm doing allow me to take care of my family? Am I raising my children in a way that honors God, even though sometimes those decisions can be challenging with how we do it. A lot of times, I think for me is I am prone to think, I guess, I don't know if my wife would agree with this or not, is sometimes I feel like a fixer. And that's a detriment, because what I then do is I think I can just fix it. And what I need to do is even in the plans of those fixing it, even though God has given me a brain and wisdom, I need to seek his face and prayer with him and the wisdom of others around me. You know, a lot of people have rushed into things and then they go like, oh, that didn't work out the way that I thought it would. I was reading this thing. I can't remember what it was. We see. Can't. I'll brutalize this. We should be like ready, aim, shoot, but we tend to be ready, shoot, aim. You know, we immediately do something and then we realize, oh, wait, let me think this through before I do it. I see. Jessica had shared, says, with a lot of big decisions we've made that don't have a black and white answer, we pray specifically. Let's see. Got to read more. Sorry. Specifically, just to have peace and know that's the best place, the best choice. Yeah, that's true. God does give us peace with some things, but you know, it's one of the things I when all the years of youth ministry, you know, people would say like, "Oh, I can be anything I want when I grow up," and I'd be like, "Well, not according to
really.
you can't really be anything you want. You know, you probably really don't. Yeah, I don't think God would validate you growing up to be a bank robber or things of that nature. But yeah, and I think we have all seen people who have acted without any real thinking, and then wonder why they have to endure such horrible consequences for their decision. It is interesting that even in James, when you read it, it's interesting when it says, if God wills it. I mean, let me find it here again. It says, instead you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. It doesn't even in that say that we actually will accomplish what we set out to do. It's that if the Lord wills it, then we will. So we may even have a plan, and we may even think it's in accord with Scripture. It doesn't mean that God is going to carry out even what we think is a sound biblical plan, at least not in our timing. Sometimes I think of Hill McConaughey, all the times he spent in South America without seeing any conversions, and yet God used his faithfulness and God's faithfulness after they left to reap a large harvest. But Hill may have seen that as, well, God didn't bless our efforts, but when he actually did, it just was not in his timing.
So you had asked earlier about like a real world example of where life intervened or where God stepped in and, you know, shut things down. So if we go back in time to see, what's that, 2011, between summer vacation plans, moving into the senior year for our homeschooled high schooler, and him starting to make his new friends and the plans that they were doing and all that. And
the new friends weren't exactly walking with Christ. Yeah.
And Keaton broke his neck. And broke his neck to a point where one of the doctors actually told us, if you have to break your neck, this is the way to do it. Because even though it was a burst fracture of the C1 vertebrae and crushed the bone that the skull sits on, everything was within 5 millimeters of each other, and it hadn't pierced through the lining that goes around the bone. So it was like, it's all going to grow back together. It was just like breaking it apart. So what did God decide he was going to protect us from that summer leading into his senior year, whether it be him and the friends that he was garnering or us, and trips or things that we may have been planning,
Well,
and changed my work schedule because I didn't leave the hospital till he did, and changed our plans for what we did all around.
we were away from Grace Brethren Church too. Larry had gotten upset about something, and we were at another church even, and you all stepped in and loved on us and visited with Keaton and cared for us, and that brought us back to Grace Brethren. So it was monumental in our family for each one of us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a very good and wise view of it, because I think a lot of people might become very discouraged by that, but you guys have a very good view of that, and I think that's good. And I remember that time. That was, of course, it's odd what you remember. I remember that Keaton had a much bigger TV than Larry did in the room. And I don't know why that sticks in my mind, but I just remember walking in and go like, why does the son get the much bigger TV? He's like,
Because he couldn't move his neck.
Right. Got the recliner too.
yeah.
Dad's recliner after that.
Yeah. And it's good because, sometimes we become so disappointed and don't realize that, well, God did it as a benefit for us. Even though you think about the story of Joseph and his brothers, them throwing him in the dry well or the pit, and him saying, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. But how long did that take? With the Old Testament scholars listening, how many years was it from the time he was thrown and sold into slavery until God's plan was revealed to Joseph?
I may be wrong, but I'm thinking like 18 years-ish.
Yeah, I had one time studied it out, but I don't remember what it was. But it was a lengthy period of time, because he was, Joseph also spent a fair amount of time in prison before he actually got out, and all of that happened. So, I am not, of course, probably way too much information. I am not really good at the very long view. I feel like I can be patient for a couple of days, maybe even a week or a month. But I mean, it reminds me of, is it Jeremiah that God says, like, you're going to spend your entire life and be a failure in ministry?
Yeah, 70 years. Yeah.
It's like, well, Lord, you really could have just left out the last part and just told me I'd be, give me the 70 years and go from there.
Doesn't that come back to your question, though,
Yes.
about why does the Bible remind us so much of our frailty? Because in our humanness, we are invincible. There's nothing that we can't do, and we're always thankful and grateful for all of the great things that we do because of how smart we are, or what we figured out, or what we did this. And I'm speaking in generalities, no people, but and then something happens where your son breaks his neck, you're in a closet with a tornado going down the street, a virus jumps multiple continents and is spreading at a rate that no one can control, and suddenly everyone's now back to, all right, God, you're in control.
Yeah.
So it's now is when we're willing to give up our control.
Yeah.
And so how much of this, if this does not impact me, am I willing to go forward and bring out to the next side? Because one of the conversations I had with my friend who's out at Boeing was, I don't, I haven't done a really great job at all of spreading the word.
Yeah.
I'm too busy making tents, not enough focus on talking about the unknown God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, though, that you are not cut too much different from cloth than I am, where we can be maybe unreasonably hard on ourselves, and one day we may be more amazed than we realize at the impacts that we have had, although it's sometimes very hard for me to see that from my side. What are, as we talk about this, what are some ways that we can help each other to avoid planning without regard to God? What are some ways that we can encourage each other to make sure we include God in our plans and be okay when our plans don't come to fruition?
Some of it is just to say, hey, have you prayed about this? Or let's pray right now. Just that prompt.
Yeah. And that's something I'm learning. I'm really learning. I think sometimes it freaks people out because it used to be really, it's like, oh, well, I'll be praying about that. And I've tried to be very intentional to say, well, let's pray right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to launch into a 13-hour Spurgeon prayer. Sorry. But you can pray and just real briefly, and then just remind yourself to continue to pray for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Veronica's really good about that. And to be honest, like, to just stop right in the middle of what you're doing and to be like, let's stop and pray. Like it even 15 years into being saved, it still doesn't come natural.
Mm.
It's
Right.
still something that's like, wow, this feels awkward right now. Why does it feel awkward? And on this idea of praying, I heard a sermon by Paul Washer, and he was talking about how the audacity that we have sometimes, where we'll make these big decisions, small decisions, but especially big decisions before we've really gone to God in prayer. And he's like, just look at Jesus, the wisest, most perfect, he was perfect man that ever was created, or wow, I'm saying a lot of incorrect things right now, that ever was. He wasn't created.
Yeah,
That ever
about theology and doctrine, Jeremy.
I know. Just take Jesus as an example. He still went to God before choosing his disciples and spent time fasting and in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
He still had to go to his heavenly Father. And I mean, we are nowhere near to the point where Jesus was when it comes to everything. And we think we can make these decisions without doing that.
Mm.
I think Laura, that's where Lori's got a really good comment about asking for wisdom. I think not to be sexist, but I think sometimes men struggle with this more than ladies, is that men think that our own wisdom is sufficient.
It's like the asking for directions things. It's the same thing.
Just remember, you're not really lost until you've been gone 24 hours.
So the other, you say it like that, to stop and pray now, right? But the psychology behind that is that's a behavior modification technique as well, right? They tell people if you want to quit smoking, one of the things that you do is whenever you feel like you want to have a cigarette is you don't just have the cigarette, you have to stop everything that you're doing. If you're driving, you pull off the road, and then you start to see the amount of time that you're spending doing that. So if you really want to modify the behavior and get closer to God, the act of stopping whatever you're doing to go to God in prayer is placing him in priority over anything else that you might be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it will feel very unnatural at first. And I would assume that the more that you do it, the more you get to it, the more that it just becomes the habit or the behavior, as
Right.
opposed to the modification that we're striving for.
Yep.
Yeah. You want to say something, Jeremy? Have that look on your face.
No.
Oh.
I think he was trying to figure out how I was equating prayer to smoking, but
I just had to, access my Pentecostal.
But I think so, because I really do think as we do need to be praying for our own wisdom, but also for the wisdom of our leaders, because I guess sometimes it's really heartbreaking to me to see people being so mean-spirited when, if I heard a guy say, like, imperfect information makes imperfect decisions. and we find out things. You make the best decision you can based on God's word and based on the available information. But if you don't know all the information, you make a decision that somebody later may look at it and go like, well, how in the world did you make that decision? It's like, well,
Right.
based on what I knew, that's
Mhm.
that's what I thought was best. But I think I've been doing a lot of I'll just confess is doing a lot of listening to different things and some reading, and I really do believe that this is a test for us as believers,
Mhm.
and not just about taking care of our neighbors, which is we should be doing. Touch base with your neighbors when you see them. If your community has a way of getting in touch, do it that way. But a couple of pastors say, this is a real test for the body of Christ. Will we really pull together, and when this is all over, will we come back together, or will this be a winnowing of those who are really part of the body and those who are not?
Mhm.
I think I'd shared last week that I have a lot of confidence in my Savior and confidence in the flock, but I guess that confidence really is only borne out over time, and who knows how long this is going to go. I know in Pinellas County, I think the stay at home is for 7 days. I think Hillsborough County has followed suit. Um, so. Does anybody else have anything else they want to share? We've been on about roughly half hour, and I know that other people have. You have. It's interesting. I read this article. It says people think that you have all sorts of time when you're locked in your house. I have found myself to be busier in the last
Mhm.
like 2 weeks,
Yes.
and I don't have small children. I don't. You people with small children, I am amazed that you have kept your sanity this long.
So the one thing I'll bring up is the state of Florida released their evening numbers for updates, and there was over 550 new cases
Yeah.
in the state of Florida today, which is the highest total that they've announced on any given day, and it continues to grow.
Mhm.
And the overwhelming majority of them are in Miami and Palm Beach.
And I think the numbers will. I mean, if you look at from other countries, we're still in the upslope.
Yeah.
Um,
So you think about sharing on that. Our prayer should be for anyone currently impacted by this. Seattle is still struggling for beds, and my friend at Boeing today told me that they spent their day trying to fashion emergency medical devices for Providence Everett Hospital at Boeing, trying to get more equipment so that they can try and save some of these folks. So,
and for those of you who have worked in the medical field before, currently, I heard a story of a hospital. They had 20 ICU beds, but they had over 500 patients who needed to be in ICU. I mean, it's almost hard for me to imagine when you think about, it's one thing to have 20 and need 30, but you have 20, you need over 500.
Yeah, we have about 40 ventilators at our hospital.
Yeah. So, all right. So I will be putting up, just a reminder, I'll be putting up the post for Sunday service. It'll be 11-ish. So we'll do that Sunday morning again. We'll be in our second week in the book of Amos. So you're welcome to join us. Still trying to figure out the music standpoint. I am learning way more about streaming and the like than I really want to know. I found out about something called OBS today. Can't remember what it stands for, but so I'm just trying to work my way through all that. So you guys just pray that my studies are good. I'm going to pray and then stop the recording, but we can stay on and chat for a little bit. And so let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your grace. Lord, what a grace it is that we live in a day and time that we have this technology. When this happened again, or before in like the early 1900s, people were in their homes and had no way really of contacting each other. Lord, I also just pray that you help us to be mindful of others, that we would be reminded to send cards or to call people or send emails to people so that they would, Lord, we could care for them. Lord, those are struggle more with being alone than others. And Father, I especially pray for Bob Richards now as he's not able to go see Peggy. Lord, I know that must break his heart. Lord, that this would pass quickly, that he'd be able to see her again. Lord, just thank you for what you're doing for us. Lord, help us to be obedient. Help us to be faithful. Lord, help us to cling to you and the truth of your word. It's in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.